I'm pretty convinced that, with Airbnb and short-term renting, you can make 6, 8, 10, maybe even 12% return and that's cash, right? That's without leverage. And I think, the risk reward is pretty good. I mean, a house is, there's risks, of course, but it's, I would say like putting my money in the stock market at this point is much riskier than to buy a house.
Welcome to Live, Let, Thrive, a podcast about the Airbnb life, the share economy, and everything in between. Here are your hosts, Micah and Steve.
Hello. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Live, Let, Thrive. This is episode 51 of our famous podcast. And so, excuse me, again, I'm getting used to do this. This is the second episode I've done by myself. Not by myself, but I have a guest today. But without Micah. Micah's been really busy lately, but he should be back on the next episode if y'all really miss his voice. Anyways, I have a special guest with me today, the awesome Jasper Ribbers, our inspiration in the whole Airbnb and podcasting world. And so welcome aboard, Jasper. Good to see you again, old friend.
Yeah, good to see you, Steven. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. Just busy. You know how it is.
Absolutely.
Not as busy as you, I'm sure, because, I mean, you're all over the world, literally.
That's true. But I do take my time off as well.
Well, I see you enjoying life, man, on the Facebook world. But, I'll jump into it. You have an awesome podcast we've been following for a long time called Get Paid for Your Pad. And first of all, I'm sure most of our listeners have heard of Get Paid for Your Pad. And they, but for the ones that haven't, if you could give us a brief description of what Get Paid for Your Pad is, and also what's the big changes that's happening right now with the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started the podcast Get Paid for Your Pad back in 2014. Now, this was right after I published my book. And at the time, I felt like there wasn't very much good content out there on the topic of Airbnb hosting. And so, I thought it'd be a good idea to help other Airbnb hosts to, create good listings, make sure their photos are good, help them with the settings and, the hospitality parts of, how do you communicate with your guests? How do you make sure you get good reviews and all that kind of basic stuff. And, I've been talking about it for about 4 years now. I've done like 236 episodes, I think now.
Yeah.
And, I felt like it was time for a change because on the one hand, there's a lot of other people now that are, giving very good advice on Airbnb hosting, such as yourself. And also there's lots of books out there. There's blogs, there's Facebook groups. I mean, there's so much information out there now that I feel like, there's enough information out there for people that I don't necessarily have to be talking about it. I could do something else, and at the same time, I don't feel as passionate anymore about talking about Airbnb because I've been talking about it for so long. So I decided to shift the focus a little bit. Now, as you may know, in the last year or so, I sold my house, my original Airbnb apartment in Amsterdam, and in the last year, I've been traveling around the world finding places where I could reinvest the proceeds of the sale of the house in Amsterdam. And so the idea is really for me to have multiple properties around the world and, stay at my own places when I am there and rent them out on Airbnb when I'm not. And I've really enjoyed this whole process of, trying to find places for investing in Airbnbs. There's a lot of challenges, especially if you're abroad. Like you don't know the area, you don't know the legal system, you don't know the market. You're kind of in the dark, and so to spend a substantial amount of money with that many question marks is I find quite a scary thing to do, and I can imagine that other people who are looking to invest abroad probably as concerned as I have. It's when you're investing in your backyard and you know everything, right? It feels very comfortable. But to invest in a country where you have no idea if the legal system even functions in case for some reason you lose a home, or there's a lot of things, a lot of question marks, a lot of things that can happen. And so I decided to talk more about the investing side. How do you find a good place to invest for in Airbnb? Where do you get a good return? What are the things you gotta pay attention to? Like things like the regulation, like I said, the legal system, the taxes. There might be a different currency. It's a different market. It's a different culture. And so how do you go about navigating all those different factors? So that's really the focus now. I'll still be talking about Airbnb a little bit because I'll still be using it, and so. But it won't be, the focus of the podcast so much.
That's cool, man. And where in the world are you now?
So right now I'm in Panama. So as part of this process is also that since I sold my house in Amsterdam, I decided to apply for residency here in Panama. That's mostly for tax reasons, and so I'm kind of in the process of like gathering documents and. Talking to lawyers and stuff like that to see how this process works. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of red tape involved in getting a residency. But I'm hopeful that I'll be able to get it done this year.
That's awesome, dude. Hey, do you mind if we go off camera? Cause it's going pretty slow on this end.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
And I can take off my shirt again.
Oh no, you should have stayed on camera for that. We'd have got a lot more hits, I'm sure.
Well, it's really, as you may know, it's really hot in Panama, and with podcast recording or an interview like this one, I turn off the AC, right? Because it makes a lot of noise, but then the consequence of that is that it gets really hot in the room. So I usually record without a shirt on.
Oh, there you go. That's very for y'all ladies out there, and some gentlemen, if you're into that. There you go. There's the visual for you, Jasper without a shirt. You're still going to keep your show name Get Paid for Your Pad, right? Because you're pretty much, you're still doing the same thing, and you're using these properties around the world that you're going to accumulate to travel, and you have your own spot to stay when you go there. So I assume you're keeping the cool name, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, looking back, and I'm happy that I chose a brand name that's kind of broad, because get paid for your pad. It's still going to be about getting paid for your pad. It's going to be a little bit more about how to find the pad to get paid for.
Yeah, exactly. So you here's what comes to my mind first of all is like you're in a different country. You're in a foreign country. And you're gonna not only I guess you're gonna help teach people how to invest in other countries, but you're gonna teach them all the ins and out regulations, stuff like that. Now, as part of your teachings, is it gonna be like someone can go? Let's say you're in Colombia, someone can travel to Colombia, and you could like show them the ins and outs for a fee, of course, and just and help them make their decision on a place, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be very happy to do those things. Right now, this is going to be a little bit different than the original podcast that I started, because when I started the original podcast, I felt like I had a lot of expertise to share. And because I already had a couple of years of experience on Airbnb hosting, but in the investing side, I'm kind of a novice to it myself. So I envision that in the beginning, it's not so much as about me going to be telling people how to do it. It's more like me doing it and sharing with people how it goes, and sort of sharing the learning lessons as they come. Because I don't really feel like I'm an expert on the topic of investing, at least not yet. I've bought 3 properties so far, but who knows? Maybe those properties will turn out like really bad investments. I don't know. The future will tell. But I'm writing a book at the moment, sort of just journaling almost, and just writing down all the experiences that I've had throughout this progress of finding apartments in these different countries, and so it's much of a learning lesson or a learning experience for me as it could be for the listener. So I guess that's a bit the difference. But once I get to that level where I feel like, okay, now I have a really good idea of what to look for. I have some experience, and I feel like I can really provide value to other people who are looking at places. Then I'm obviously going to be happy to be like sort of a second piece of brain to look at the decision and see if it makes sense.
So it's got to be kind of scary and exciting for you in a way. I mean, and a challenge, I guess. You got 260 shows. You get you can get into a rhythm and like kind of I don't know. I wouldn't say like autopilot, but you know how you've done them before in the past. You kind of you kind of knew what you were doing. And now you're changing it up totally different, and that's cool. That's like a soccer player trying to learn, American football or something to me. And it's got to be really, I mean, it's got to get you excited again about the whole thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The moment I sort of decided to make the shift, I could immediately feel the different type of energy coming up. In my body, like when I would think about what type of podcast to do and who to talk to, and because like I said, this is a learning experience for myself. Before I would interview 2 episodes, I interview an Airbnb host, and there's not that much that is new for myself, right? But now I'm interviewing people that I can definitely learn a lot from. I mean, you can learn something from everybody, right? But you know what I mean, like these people who have done what I'm doing, and they have more experience than me, most of them, and so it's a bit of a different dynamic, which I find really exciting because I love to learn myself as much as I love to share what I've learned with others.
That's awesome, man. And this will be your second book you wrote, and so could you? I have in this realm, in this world, this podcasting world. And people just sharing information with everybody, it's part of the sharing economy, which is what I love. And could you? I guess people think of books as like a lost art in a way, in our generation and the ones after us especially. But like it's more like blogging or anything like tweets or short little snippets here and there. But to take on a book, man, that's pretty awesome. And what is your process when you're taking on something so big?
That's a good question. I guess this book is a bit different than the first book that I wrote. When I wrote the first book, all the content was in my head because I spent a lot of time going through other resources that I found on the internet, and I was making notes for myself as well. So I already had like a sort of the backbone of the book ready, and I just kind of needed to expand on it and just kind of like brain dump. Whereas this book is very different because a lot of the topics now that I'm writing about are things that I've literally just learned, and I'm learning on the way. I'm also including 10 case studies of other people who've invested in short-term rentals all around the world. I've got stories from Florida, from Eastern Europe, from Colombia. Of course, my own case study is in there as well, and those as well as the other parts in the U.S. And the interesting thing is I've actually learned a lot from just writing down these case studies of the people that I've interviewed. And so, the process is very different. I'm writing this book really as I go. Every time I learn something or I think of something new, I just add it to the book. And so I also don't exactly know how many words the book is going to be, like, because it could very well be that I'm just going to add a bunch of chapters in a couple months when I suddenly learn a bunch of things that I didn't realize before. Whereas the first book was, I already knew pretty much what the content should be like.
Right. And here's I've always wanted to write a book about several different subjects, and I how do you? I'd love to use people's stories and experiences in my book. How do you go about doing that? I mean, do you have to get special permissions, and also do they expect something back in return?
No, in general, people are pretty happy to contribute to a book. I mean, most people are pretty about the idea that their story is going to be featured in a book. So I don't think I've had anyone kind of decline or ask for some sort of reward or financial compensation. And also, a lot of the people that I interview, they have their own. A lot of them have their own audiences as well, right? And so they are happy to contribute. I think also because it gives them some exposure for their own business. Now I don't know if it's maybe there's some people that have kind of like a very large audience. If I were to ask like Tim Ferriss or something, like you read a chapter from my book, then I don't know, he might have had time for it. You know what I mean? But I guess that will be only like the sort of the high profile guys.
That's cool, man. So let's get back to the investing thing a little bit. I guess most people get started in Airbnb is just renting out a room from their house or renting out their whole house, something like that. Maybe eventually move into the next house, but like to go out there and to buy something specifically for Airbnb, is that what your intent is, or are you looking at different ways to invest in other countries, or that's your primary manner of investing?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the primary thing, and the reason that I think this is an interesting topic is that right now if you have some money and you want to get a decent rate of return on your investment, right? I mean, where can you go? Right? I mean, the stock market is at an all-time high. Dividend yields are very low. There's, obviously putting your money in the bank isn't very helpful either. Bond prices are at all-time highs, so the yields are extremely low. I mean, the yield on the 30-year government bond in the U.S. is 3%. I mean, your money is fixed for 30 years. You're getting 3%. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me. So where do you go? And then obviously there's long-term renting, but with the house prices that are so high now, even in Europe and the US, I mean, I'm sure there's cases where you can still make very good returns, especially if you leverage. But other than that, it's pretty hard to get a good return somewhere. And I'm pretty convinced that with Airbnb and short-term renting, you can make 6, 8, 10, maybe even 12% return and that's cash, right? That's without leverage. And I think the risk reward is pretty good. I mean, a house is there's risks, of course, but it's I would say like putting my money in the stock market at this point is much riskier than to buy a house. And so I feel like it's like acceptable risk and a very high return.
That's good. That's good. Now you said you own 2 properties or is it 3 properties already?
Well, yeah, I've bought 3, but none of them are completed yet. One of them is being furnished as we speak in Colombia, in Cali. So that one should be ready in a couple of weeks. I've got one in the Philippines, which should be ready. The Philippines is a bit of it's always difficult to estimate when something's going to be ready, especially because it's on a small little island, and also there's like typhoons and all sorts of stuff going on in over there. So it's hopefully it'll be done in a couple months. And then the last one I actually recently bought. It's a studio in a building that it's pre-construction, so the building isn't even there yet. So that one's kind of even scarier because you're investing in a country and then the building isn't even there yet. So you kind of feel like, okay, am I ever going to see anything? But I'm also kind of doing this. This was a pretty affordable one. So if for some reason I get scammed, I won't be broke. But yeah, I'm kind of trying different things as well. So just for myself also to learn. So I'd rather do like more affordable, like 50 to 150 investments versus like larger investments. If one goes south, then I won't be bankrupt, because I realize that I don't have very much experience with this at all. So it's very possible that I'm gonna screw up at some point.
That's wow. That's wild how you're trying three different things and three different spots, like way far away from each other in the world. And it seems like the only way this could happen is with this digital age, of course, where we can manage things from a few thousand miles away, the other side of the planet. You are what you are doing. You will have a successful show because you're getting a lot of content. Either something really good is going to happen, not so good, or in between, whatever. But you're going to have some great shows, man. And the more drama, the better. But I hope you're nothing but success in all these endeavors. And I was gonna say, so you mentioned leverage. Now you got three, and it seems like you're being pretty cautious with your money. Now, if you these three, you got them up and running, they were very successful. Everything's going pretty smooth, and someone comes up, hey Jasper, I like what you're doing. How could I help? Can I invest, or can I? Yeah, are you up for bringing on investors or going in partnerships on more properties just to like scale faster?
Yeah, I thought about that because I've already had quite a few people reach out to me actually who said exactly that, and so I thought about it, and I think this is something that I could consider in the future, but like I said, I kind of just want to take a little bit of time to to get the expertise myself and to get some experiences before I start playing with other people's money, but it's definitely something that I think would make a lot of sense in the future. And so, yeah, I think it is a good idea, but, I think right now is not the time.
So are all the Dutch very meticulous?
What does meticulous mean?
Very process-oriented, regimented?
Oh, yeah, I guess we are, yeah. I guess that, us and the Germans, we're kind of like that.
It seems like Airbnb is an unstoppable machine. Everybody's either trying to do it themselves or trying to invest money in someone that's doing it. And how do you foresee Airbnb changing and evolving, especially with kind of like, for example, Berlin, they tried to shut it down altogether, and then they're starting to let it happen again. And do you see like more cities just kind of like I don't know, partnering with Airbnb, but being less restrictive, and it just becoming like the next McDonald's, the next Walmart, just part of our life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now we're in a stage where local authorities around the world are trying to figure out how to handle Airbnb and how to come to a solution that kind of works for everybody, how to come to a status quo in terms of regulations. I think that no regulations in certain, especially in the bigger cities. If you have no regulations, then you can definitely get some circumstances in where the neighbors and the people that live in the neighborhood, it can get a little overwhelming. So I think it's good that there, in certain areas there are some regulations, and the local authorities are experimenting. I think some of the authorities are overshooting a little, and now they're Berlin is crawling back a bit because they realized that they went a little overboard with the regulations, and so they're trying to find an equilibrium that works, and so I think it'll take a few years before that happens. But I think the model that Berlin is looking to adopt, I believe it's the 90-day rule, where you can rent out for 90 days a year. The entire properties, just like in London, in Amsterdam, and Paris, we have similar rules in place, and I kind of feel like that's going to be the sort of the default regulations, or the go-to regulations, is to set a number of days that you're allowed to do it, and potentially also having to register with the local authorities. I think that's probably going to be in the long term. It seems to me that that's the most sort of viable and sustainable way to regulate it.
And to you, what top cities do you see that are ripe for investment in Airbnb? Like it's a great place to buy one and fix it up and get it running. And you think more tourists are about to flood there, and it's cheap enough still. It hasn't been oversaturated. What are your top cities around the world that you would see a good place to invest?
Well, first of all, let me say that it's kind of tough to name like cities because it depends on so many factors, and a lot of the factors are very local, right? It's about there's an airport, a new airport being opened up nearby, right? Or some other infrastructure projects, or maybe there's a neighborhood that's up and coming. So it's like on the city level. I mean, I'm sure there's good opportunities in every single city almost. But I can name a few places where I think that there's sort of more of a macro opportunity going on. I'd say the first one that I'm looking at right now is Puerto Rico. In particular San Juan. I mean, with the bankruptcy and the hurricane, the country, or I guess it's not a country, a special state, or I don't know. I don't understand exactly yet what Puerto Rico is, but I know it's in the U.S. and it has a special status. But anyway, the real estate prices are very affordable right now there, and it doesn't seem to be very competitive on Airbnb. I think Puerto Rico is a place where there's a lot of opportunity. I'm actually going to be speaking at a conference on April 24 to April 26, which is about this very topic, about investing in Puerto Rico. And there's a few other things that are really attractive about this place, especially if you're an American citizen, because in Puerto Rico you can invest and you can leverage, right? You can get a mortgage. It's within the U.S. And the second thing is that it's very tax friendly, right? Or not tax friendly, but the taxes are low, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So I think as an American, you pay like 4%. Corporate tax and zero income tax or something, or I don't know. I could be wrong, but it's very low. So I would say that's one place that is very interesting. And then for me, Colombia has always been interesting because there's such a discrepancy between the perception and reality. People still think it's that dangerous country where there's drug cartels and there's the FARC and there's all these terrorists and guerrillas and God knows what. But in reality, Colombia is an amazing country. It's developing pretty fast as far as I can tell. I don't think it's any more dangerous than anywhere else. As long as you use your common sense. And the lifestyle in Colombia is great. I mean, it's super affordable. The Colombian cuisine is great. And real estate prices are very low. So those are two places. I'd say another place that has my interest is the Philippines. And then from a macro perspective, I just think that the Chinese at some point are going to travel and they want to go to the beach, and the Philippines is kind of like right in their backyard, and it's not as developed yet from a tourism standpoint as Thailand and maybe even Vietnam or places like Bali and Indonesia. And there's the Philippines is it's like 7,000 islands, and there's amazing, beautiful beaches everywhere you go. And so naturally, I just kind of feel that the Philippines is often kind of overlooked as a tourist destination because people in Europe they want to fly to Thailand. It's a little closer, because the Philippines is like this big island group in the Pacific, so it just feels like it's a little bit further out. And yeah, so that's another country where I think there could be a lot of opportunity. The people also speak English there, which is an advantage if you want to spend a lot of time there. You don't have to learn like Thai or Indonesian or Spanish or whatever it may be. So I'd say those are the places that I'm interested in.
So there's what do they say? There's like 1,000 Philippine islands.
7,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and because it's like our archipelago. Do I pronounce that correct? The water, it's inside. There's no big waves and stuff, so you have this like really tranquil ocean. Lots of coral reefs, lots of scuba diving, and it's just beautiful. It's amazing.
Man, I want to go. I got a lot of Filipino friends over here, and yeah, they've told me about it. It does sound amazing. Have plenty of San Miguel beer while you're over there.
Yeah, and if you go over, try some of the local rum that they have. And if you want to hear a funny story about alcohol,
Yeah.
they make their own local rum in the Philippines, and it's very, very cheap. In fact, it's so cheap that I went to this bar on a very small island. Actually, one of my favorite places in the Philippines, Siargao, it's called. It's a great place for surfing. And I was looking at the menu, and so like a rum coke cost 80 pesos, which is about $2. But then a double rum coke was 60 pesos, which is 150, and a triple rum coke was 40 pesos, which is $1. And so I was a bit confused. I was like, either the person who wrote that down was drunk, or the owner of this bar is trying to get people wasted. So I went up to the barman and I was like, "Is there a mistake on this menu?" And then he told me, "No, it's correct." I was like, "How is that possible? Why is it a triple rum coke is half the price of a single rum coke?" And so it turned out the rum is so cheap, it's cheaper than the coke. Can you believe that?
That's awesome. I want to go there even more now.
Yeah, you want to get drunk on less than $5? It's definitely the place to be.
A rum and coke. Hold the coke, please. So without coke, it would be like free, right? Oh man. Is there which one? And which? I guess on that same note, I'll ask. I know you said there's like a bunch of factors and stuff like that. But do you see a spot that you would not recommend someone trying to invest and do Airbnb in this city?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat the question?
Like, you mentioned some good investment opportunities that you're looking at. Now, do you see spots around the world that people might? I mean, I don't know. Either it's oversaturated, or they're getting stricter, or you see, I don't know. You don't see like it being a really good investment right now to do Airbnb. Like, what cities around the world are not very good for Airbnb investing?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of cities where it's become very difficult. Cities where it's very hard right now. It's for example, my home city, Amsterdam. They're looking at restricting the rentals to 30 days per year. So you either are gonna have to open 10 Airbnb accounts, or you list on all these different platforms. And I mean, it's I'd rather go to a place where the rules aren't so strict. New York obviously is pretty tough. San Francisco has cracked down on it. Berlin. So recently, Berlin is considering regulation, or they already passed it, that they loosened up a little bit. Barcelona is one of the strictest Airbnb markets as well. Singapore is very difficult at the moment. And then there's a number of places. Santa Monica is a good example, but there's also a number of places where it's not allowed, like places like Taiwan, for example, and Taipei. I think Airbnb is not allowed, but then there's not a lot of enforcement, right? So you kind of have to kind of make a choice. Okay, am I going to take a gamble? Like here in Panama, for example, Panama City, Airbnb is also not allowed, but a lot of people do it, and they get away with it. So, I'd rather be in a place where you can do it, where it's allowed, because I don't want to worry about my losing my Airbnb place at some point because it's illegal what I'm doing. Like I used to do it in Amsterdam, but technically that wasn't legal either. So I'm kind of happy to get out of the gray zone and just to play by the rules.
Now, with the big change you're doing with your show, moving more towards the investment side, Are you afraid that you're going to alienate some of your longtime fans that just want to hear about, what curtains to choose and what locks to use on their doors?
No, I mean there might be some people who are just not interested in the investing side who might stop listening, and then they might go to some of the other podcasts. But I think that's okay. I think there's also a lot of people who are very interested in the investing side who are not necessarily interested in hearing about how to arrange your photo gallery. So I think it's probably going to be a bit of a shift, but at the same time, I think that I think of a lot of the listeners that I have right now, a lot of them are actually interested in investing. I've noticed that a lot of the questions that I get are around the topic of investing. So that also makes it kind of like a natural shift for me as well.
Nice. And for you Jasper fans out there that still want to hear about curtains and locks and the best toilet to use, you can still listen to Live Let Thrive. I'm just gonna plug that right now, Jasper, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Do you see yourself moving more to? I know you kind of do it. I mean, with all the apps you use, you kind of do it a little bit, passively. You manage your Airbnbs passively. But do you see yourself moving towards, like, especially accumulating more properties, like 10, 20, who knows however many you're going to grab in the future? But do you see yourself relying more, like, on property managers to run your Airbnbs?
Yeah, I will definitely try that out. I mean, I still want to manage at least one of my properties myself because I want to keep in touch with the whole Airbnb thing and be involved in it. But it's very possible that I'll be using some management companies to manage some of the properties for sure.
Nice. Now we can't talk investing without talking about podcasting. I mean, you're famous. You're famous for I don't know how I can use the word famous, but it's in our podcasting world, you're famous, and for Airbnb people, you're the go-to. And how like there's a lot of people that listen to podcasts and think I could do a podcast. I got stuff to say. And what advice would you give them and us at Live Let Thrive? And what advice would you give them? And especially, is there ever a way that you can actually make a living off being a podcaster?
Absolutely. I mean, you can absolutely make a living out of podcasting. However, it's not easy. I mean, if it's about making money, and I recommend people doing something else. But I think that if you're passionate about what you're talking about, and if you don't give up, then over the long term, it's definitely possible to make money. Like I started taking on sponsors at some point. Now I've paused it because I'm not doing it as consistently now. As I'm kind of like searching sort of for a new equilibrium for myself, or figuring out how I want to continue with the podcast. So now I'm kind of in a phase where I'm trying to figure things out. So I've stopped the sponsorings, but there's a very clear model. I mean, John D. Loomis or John Lee Dumas. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Not offhand. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, he has one of the most successful podcasts, if not the most successful podcast that's around. And he's making a killing. He's doing a daily show on entrepreneurship. And I'd say for anyone who wants to, is really looking at podcasting as a job, I would say, look up John Lee Dumas and read his story, because, he started out literally, he wanted to learn about entrepreneurship, and he couldn't find any more podcasts that talk about entrepreneurship. So he just started his own. He started interviewing entrepreneurs. And he was extremely passionate about it, and he's making a killing now. So I mean, it's definitely possible, but it's not an easy route. I'd say for most people, it'll take a long time, a lot of work, a lot of dedication, So, but yeah, I think it's possible. Anything is possible.
But I guess on our end, you know, our show's still small. We've passed the 50 episode mark, which is, to me, that's a big thing, because I've listened to podcasts for a while, and I've always noticed right around the 50 point, they usually just disappear, man. I don't know what it is about that number 50, but a lot of them just disappear. And right when I'm getting into them, like, what the hell happened to them? They're gone. They just poof.
Yeah.
And luckily we've passed that 50 mark. And I guess what I've noticed, you know, we haven't made a freaking dime off of ours yet, but the networking that you get out of it, and whatever your podcast is about, is freaking priceless, man. We've met some really cool people. We've actually gone in and done a little bit of business with these people, you know, outside of the podcast. And it's just like, yeah, you're going to get so much networking accomplished.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, you know, I definitely see the podcasting more as a way to, as a pillar of the business, but not necessarily the money generating part of the business. Like you said, it's a great way to connect with people. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to build a connection with people. Like, you interview somebody on the show, and you know, you have a connection, right? So I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, man. And I'm sure you get tons of fan mails from, like, chicks all over the world, right?
I get some of them, yeah. Some are a little freaky. I can tell you.
All right, go ahead and read them. I'm just kidding. Just
No, I mean, like, it's kind of strange if you get, like, random messages from women saying, like, you know, I love you, darling, and stuff like that. But it happens. Yeah, it happens.
Oh, I know, Jasper. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I live vicariously.
Wait. You get there when you get to 100. That's when the women start messaging you.
There's some real motivation right there. Back to investments a little bit. So do you believe in, like, a balanced portfolio? I mean, you got real estate. I mean, with you, it'd be the Airbnb real estate. Well, you got stocks, you got whatever, crypto. Do you believe in that, or do you believe in just putting your eggs in one basket and of what you know and just going full-fledged at that?
No, I really like diversification, and so I'd like to have you know, one of my eggs in every single basket, so to speak, right, except for the baskets that I think are going to sink. So, you know, I've got different investments. I just invested in a coffee farm also in Colombia, for example.
Wow.
You know, that's very recession proof, because, you know, whatever happens with the world, people still want to drink their coffee.
Hell yeah.
You know, I've got some angel investments. I've got some money in you know, natural resources like gold. I'm somewhat invested in the cryptocurrency market, more as a trader, but not so much as taking direction, but still. So yeah, no, I like investing. I like diversification for sure.
Nice. Now, investing in other countries, and it seems like you're doing the third world country approach, which is pretty cool. And have you come across some weird situations, or like, oh, here comes the white guy, let's get him for all his money? And they kind of, like, you know, you come across something like where they I don't want to say scams, where they just kind of, like, you know, do things a little differently.
Yeah, for sure. That happens quite often. Yeah, you have to keep a wary eye out. I was just writing in a chapter in my book about how do you know when someone is being honest. You know, obviously you can't know 100%, but you know, like, yeah, people like to take your money, right? And so they'll tell you, especially like real estate brokers. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of good ones out there, but what I noticed is that some of them, they just kind of like tell you what they think you want to hear, in order to, you know, sort of motivate you to go for the deal. And so what I tend to do is I tend to do a lot of research. I talk to a lot of people, talk to people on the street, get to know some local people and ask them. And then you usually find out some local information And then what I do is I typically will ask the broker those questions, or whoever the person is that's helping me. I'll ask that person these questions that I already know the answer to, but these are type of questions that a foreigner wouldn't necessarily know. So it would be easy for them to lie about it if that's what they want to do. And then that's a good way to sort of see if somebody's being authentic or not.
Oh, that's great advice right there. Now, the bribe system. I know in Mexico it's very prevalent. Not some cop pulls you over. He's gonna tell you a bunch of things are wrong. It's gonna be this price, but if you put some money under my clipboard, I might let you go without an incident. And I'm sure you've seen plenty of that. Traveling around third world countries. How do you how do you prepare for that, or do you know little tricks to not pay those bribes?
You mean when it comes to just like regular stuff, like overpaying for like products and taxis and stuff like that?
Well, I guess there's that, but I mean, okay. See, you're talking about new construction now. You're talking about you're buying properties, whatever. Is there like people with their hands out saying, "Oh, you're gonna need this, you're gonna need that. You got to pay us this, you got to pay us that."
Okay, I see what you mean. Yes, I didn't hear the question so well, so I was kind of like trying to figure out what you were asking. But yeah, no, I haven't really seen that much of that. What I've seen so far, what you really want to look out for, is the the real scams, right? In a lot of countries, the juridical system is very different. The legal system is very different, and so I know people who have lost literally like over $100,000 by buying a property and going through a lawyer, getting a contract, and later finding out that they don't actually own the house because the contract is void. And so that's just something, if you get bribed here and there, you lose a little bit. I guess that wouldn't be my main concern. My main concern is that I actually own the property, or I actually have a leasehold on it, or whatever the situation may be. But because if you lose like $100,000, then that's a big deal, right?
Oh man, that's big time. So, what would you advise someone? Okay, I'm gonna go to Colombia. I see a property I like. I want to buy it. What would you advise someone to do?
First of all, I would find some people who are also a foreigner who have invested in that country. All right, and ask them like, okay, how did it go? Like, get some secondhand experience from people who've walked the road that you are about to walk. And then of course, you always want to hire a lawyer that you trust. So make sure that the lawyer you hire has some references. Just kind of like think worst case scenario, right? Just do as much due diligence as you can. Make sure get advice. Like, I mean, I bought my place in Colombia through a company that I've known for a long time, that I've worked with, and I've seen firsthand like what they do, and what their properties look like, and so that felt very comfortable. But yeah, you want to dig as deep as you can, do as much research as you can, and search on Google. If you search on Google for like property scams, then you'll find quite a bit. So you want to watch those videos and see where it went wrong. How can you prevent it? I guess if you do those things, but most importantly, find somebody who's already invested before you, and potentially use like the same lawyer. Learn about the legal system as well. Make sure that you understand like what is needed in order to actually register a property with the authorities. Most countries have a registry, a central registry, but in some countries it's really complicated, like in Brazil, and I think in Colombia as well. The way the registry works is different than in most countries. In Brazil, there's places where families have owned like the land for like hundreds of years, and some lawyer might think that you can own the land, but then suddenly it turns out that you can't. So you got to be very careful.
Wow. Now, how about the issue of squatters? How can you protect yourself against that when buying in other countries? I hear there's some real strict squatter laws where people could pretty much take over your house.
I guess the easiest way to protect yourself against that is just to target tourists as your guests.
Ah, yes.
Because the tourist isn't going to squat. I was interviewing my friend Rich Holland, who's been running a property management and real estate company in Colombia for 12 years, and he was saying he's got like 250 plus apartments, and he targets tourists, and he's had one guy who was trying to squat in one of his apartments, and it only took like a phone call to the local police and changing of the locks to get that person out. So.
Oh, and he turned the electricity off too, or something, right?
Yeah. Oh, you listened to it. Yeah.
Yes, I heard that podcast the other day. Well, I was at the gym. I had you on the treadmill with me, so I'm trying to.
Okay.
You're helping me burn off some calories. I appreciate that. And it's
glad
getting
to be
me
there with you.
Oh, thanks, man. And you're making me consider giving up sugar, which that sounds like freaking hard, but it's worth it, right?
I can recommend it.
Yeah, then I can take off my shirt on podcasts.
Exactly, it's a big advantage.
I could do that now, but I don't know if anybody will want to see that. Another question. Well, people like our friend that I did a podcast with a guy named James Guzman on the Borderless podcast, and he does the same thing. He travels the world, and he stays at awesome places and stuff, and he Airbnbs people's places all over the world. But he does the arbitrage. He arbitrages them. He does like a rental arbitrage. So he'll rent out these spots, and then he'll turn them into Airbnbs and make profit off of them that way. And he doesn't believe in buying around the world. It's just a different way to do it. But you ever thought of doing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the arbitrage model is great, especially because it's more accessible to people, right? And you don't need a lot of capital to do it. And I've actually thought about doing it a couple times, but the thing is, I sold this house in Holland, and I need to invest that money. I mean, the two are not mutually exclusive. I mean, once I've invested all the sort of the money that I want to invest, then I think it's very possible that I would set up some of those rental arbitrages as well.
Oh, that makes sense. So you just want all your money to be in something working for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't want to. I mean, right now some of it is sitting in a bank account, making like 0.001% interest. I mean, what's the point?
That's true. That's true. Is it hard? Is it a hard, arduous process for a foreigner to buy a property in another country?
Depends on the country, and also depends on who you're dealing with. Like I said, because it was my first investment, I decided to go through the real estate company that Rich owns. And on one hand, obviously I'm paying a premium because these guys have to earn some money too. But the advantage of it is that I didn't really have to deal with any of the red tape and all that kind of stuff. Like they have their lawyers in place who guided me through the process, and so that was very smooth. If I had to, had I gone to Colombia and buy something myself, then that would have been much more complicated, the process. So I think it really depends on the country. But yeah, like in most cases, there's going to be a reasonable amount of red tape involved. Things like you have to go to the embassy and get documents legalized and stuff like that. But as long as you have good advisors that can guide you through the process, I think it's not too bad.
And what country again were you getting citizenship in? And is that a long, hard process too?
Yeah, so I'm trying to do that here in Panama.
Okay. And why did you
And
choose Panama?
well, because in Panama, is first of all, it's fairly easy to get your residency here compared to some other places. And secondly, it has a pretty good, favorable tax environment. And the other thing is, Panama is actually a pretty interesting country because it's very central. Like Panama City is a major airline hub for a lot of airlines. Copa Airlines, the national airline, flies pretty much everywhere direct from Panama City, and so it's easy to get around, easy to fly. There's a direct flight to Amsterdam. There's direct flights almost everywhere from here. If you were to stay in, let's say you go to Guatemala or Costa Rica or something, then if you want to fly somewhere, then a lot of times you have to connect at a hub. So that's another advantage of Panama.
And so you're getting just your residency, or are you going to become a citizen there?
I don't know if there's a difference between the two, but
Okay.
but basically the residency means that I can go to the country and stay as long as I want.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're not giving up your Dutch citizenship?
No, I mean I'm gonna keep my passport. I guess it's yeah. I guess that's the difference between residency and citizenship, huh?
Yeah, I guess it all gets confusing to me too. But yeah, you definitely want to be where you don't pay as much tax. You gotta protect that. I was gonna ask also okay, this is a whole new world. I mean, people are waking up. The younger generations, I think, are even the older ones, because like in that Borderless podcast I listened to, he talks a lot about expats. If they especially from the United States, when you get it, you can make a lot of good money here, but when you get older and you can't make good money anymore, then you kind of try to rely on whatever retirement you have. Things get expensive. You start having health issues and stuff, and you're paying thousands of dollars for things, health related issues, housing, stuff like that, and it gets really expensive when you get older. So a lot of people, of course, you probably met a lot of expats. They move to Mexico or South America, and they live good there. They have good health care. They have good the drugs are cheaper there. The quality of life is better. And so I see them doing it, but then it's like this whole it's weird because like the middle-aged generation are stuck here making their money, but then the younger generations are like, screw that. I don't want to be at a desk job. I don't want to be at a 9 to 5 behind a computer. I want to go travel the world. And they're using couch surfing, they're using Airbnb, they're using various things. So it's like and the education system here, I don't know about the rest of the world, but it's kind of like it's antiquated. It's old. It's I don't know where my question's going, but I mean, do you see maybe like a world education happening? Do you see something like a waking up, a way to teach this something that'll spark the curiosity and the creativity of this younger generation, and an awakening, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already happening, right? I mean, when I quit my job 10 years ago, well, not 8 years ago, I was traveling around, and I met very few people who were, working on the laptops and traveling at the same time. And you look now, I mean, there's like massive communities that have started. You look at places like Chiang Mai in Thailand, Ubud in Bali in Indonesia, even Medellin in Colombia, Buenos Aires is another hub. These are all places where digital nomads congregate, and look at the amount of co-working spaces around the world that are popping up everywhere. And so I think it's a big movement. I saw some predictions about 10% of the world population being like a digital nomad before like 2025 or something, or maybe it was 2030, and maybe it was 15 or not 10%. But anyway, the point is, it's a movement. It's with the internet, of course, It's much more possible, this type of lifestyle. And so yeah, I think especially the younger generations are definitely going to embrace this concept, because everybody wants to travel, and these days the younger generation grows up with the communication availabilities that are out there, right? I mean, I have a niece and a nephew, and they're like 14 and 16, and they went to these like camps, these summer camps. And I remember when I went to a summer camp when I was like 13. I mean, it's pretty hard to communicate with each other afterwards, right? I mean, yeah, I can write a letter and send it to France or to Germany or to Spain, and then hopefully it'll arrive, and you get a response 2 weeks later. Now, these kids are on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're on WhatsApp, they're on Snapchat. They are communicating, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, and when you grow up in that environment where you can communicate with anyone around the world so easily, it becomes, I think, much less of a scary thing to do, to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna pack up and I'm gonna travel around, and I'm gonna see if I can support myself and hustle, and we'll see how far I get. I think that step is sort of easier to do for the younger generation than it is for the people like myself, or even the earlier generation.
Now, I don't take you as someone that watches a lot of news. I know you're well read, because I mean, from your show, you always know what's going on in the world of Airbnb. But I mean, if you do ever catch yourself watching the news, especially here in the United States, when we watch the news, it's very depressing. And it looks like the whole world is on fire. Europe's blowing up. Of course, South America's blowing up. Got, drug cartels, got this and that. We got to build a wall. We got all this mass paranoia. And then when you actually do go travel and you go to these spots, you're like, what the hell? What were they talking about, man? It's just like, it's one of the reasons I hate the news. At my job, it's mostly older dudes, and they every morning they have the news on in the break room when we're gonna select our jobs for the day. And so it's just this negative murders, all this crazy stuff going on all around the world. And they're all up in arms. Oh yeah, that's screwed up, everything's messed up. And I'm like, they don't go anywhere. They stay here and they watch this TV all day. But when you actually start going out there and traveling, you see that it's not really like that. All the third world countries that you've been through, I mean, you don't see stuff like that, do you? And I don't know why the media does that. I don't know why they try to keep people scared. I guess they don't want us to branch out and start thinking for ourselves or something. Do you see that same thing?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hardly ever watch the news for the very same reasons that you've mentioned. I don't want to live my life in fear. And so, I don't want to expose myself to, hypothetical potential threats that are out there that are, so unlikely to actually affect me that, I feel like there's not really a point even knowing about it. But I'll watch the financial news just because I want to stay updated on what's going on in the financial world, for also for some of the investments that I have. And but other than that, I tend to stay away from the news. I guess it'd be interesting if you turn on the news and the news of the day is that 2,500 airplanes took off and landed, and there was absolutely nothing bad about it. Nothing bad happened. You don't see that on the news, right? Like all the things that go well, you don't see it on the news. Like 90% of the news is like what goes wrong. And so if you watch the news all day, you feel like you said, you feel like there's all these problems and there's all this hate and violence and God knows what. And I'm sure it's out there. But yeah, I don't want to be exposed to it too much.
Yeah, and then I guess when you actually do travel and you see things firsthand, it opens up your eyes, and you see it's not really like that. You see how great it is. I mean, a lot of places are just really beautiful. There's so many beautiful things to see around the world, and so yeah, we shouldn't be
Oh yeah, for
paralyzed
sure.
paralyzed by what the media is trying to feed us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you really want to know about the situation, you got to dig a little deeper than the news, right? Think of a country like the Philippines, for example. Yeah, there's the southern island. There's some trouble with some rebels over there, but that's like a very small area of the Philippines, right? But if you talk to somebody who's never been and who only watches the news, then you say, "Oh, I'm going to the Philippines," and that person will say, "Oh, are you crazy? There's terrorists there."
The
And I'm like,
beheadings,
"Well, I
yeah.
mean, there's 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 crazy shit happens in every country. You just gotta make sure, you just gotta do a little research and know where to go and know where not to go, right? And every country has dangerous areas.
Oh, yeah, every city has dangerous areas. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I got $100,000 in my burning a hole in my pocket. I want to invest it somewhere. Where should I throw it around the world? What should I buy?
I mean, right now, I would go to the conference in Puerto Rico. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's the reason I'm going. Well, they asked me to speak as well to talk about Airbnb, but that's also how I know that there's opportunity there because I looked at the Airbnbs and they're charging a lot of money, and they're not very competitive. The interior design is not great. The listings aren't that great, but the real estate prices are very low. So I'd say if you have $100,000, I would say go to Puerto Rico and at least check it out. The other good thing is, the country kind of needs some investments coming in because obviously they need to rebuild the country, and so what's better than like I talked to Rich about this on my podcast last week. What's better than investing money, getting a good return, and at the same time also helping rebuild a country that's been hit by bankruptcy and a hurricane. So
That's yeah. So I've been wanting to look into investing there actually, and if you're a reggaeton fan, that's the mecca for you. Just all day long reggaeton, nonstop.
exactly,
Well, Jasper,
those are good tunes.
yeah, great stuff, man. Doon, tuku, doon. If you can do that, then you got any song right there. Doon, tuku, doon. Anyways, it's been great talking to you, man. I love catching up with you and seeing what's going on in your world, which is the whole world, literally. And I'm glad you could hop on to Live Let Thrive, and it's gonna be like another epic Jasper show with like a million downloads, and so we appreciate that. And and so, yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you get that on YouTube, then you'd be set. But yeah, we appreciate you coming on, and anything you want to plug, like where people can find you, stuff like that.
Getpaidforyourpad.com is where people can find everything about Airbnb hosting, of course, and also about going to be writing more about the investment side. You can find the podcast there, and I mentioned the conference. If people are interested, I can offer some like 50% off tickets. So that would be like $370 for a 3-day conference, including like drinks and food and stuff. So it's pretty good deal. So if people are interested, I'm going to be speaking there, and a lot of people in my community are going. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very interesting to learn about the situation there. I think there's a lot of opportunities. So if people are interested, just go to PuertoRicoConference.com. And if you want that 50% discount, then you can use a code. Actually, it's 50% off Puerto Rico, and then the O and the P and the R are capitalized. Or if that doesn't work, just send me an email at jasper@getpaidforyourpad.com.
Cool, and I'll be waiting for my free tickets in my email box. So we're all good. We're all good.
Already sent them, man. Already sent them.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. All right, Jasper. Thanks for coming on, and we'll holler at you fairly soon, hopefully. And take care. Safe travels, my friend.
All right, Steven. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
All right, take care.
Take care, matey.
And that was the great Jasper Ribbers from Get Paid for Your Pad. Awesome show as usual. And I wish Micah could have been here for it, but he'll be here on the next one. We got some more awesome guests coming up. And yeah, check out Get Paid for Your Pad. It was life-changing podcast for us Live Let Thrivers. We've learned a lot from it. We've modeled a lot after it. Stolen a few things from it. Anyways, this is still weird, me doing the podcast by myself, so I hope I'm not screwing it up too badly. And we appreciate all you listeners out there, all you do for us and spreading the word on Live Let Thrive. And you know where to find us, liveletthrive.com, liveletthrive@gmail.com, that phone number that Mike always throws out. I don't know if anybody ever calls it, but you can call my phone number, 817-566-4777. Leave me a text message, let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods, and yeah, we'll throw you on the podcast. We love you all. Thanks for all the support, and keep living, keep letting, keep thriving. Peace out.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Live, Let, Thrive. Be sure to tune in next week for all the latest in the world of Airbnb and all that entails. Bye-bye.